Welcome to the second episode of the Dragon's Den podcast. Today we're joined by retired District Chief Gerard Sonnier and retired Assistant Chief Lonnie Spell. They combined for 70 years of experience, and I couldn't think of two better guests to start with. In this episode, we were barely able to scratch the surface on the amount of stories they had, both serious and fun. We hope you enjoyed listening as much as we enjoyed recording it.
He's ready to leave. Like, all right, thanks for coming, guys.
Yeah,
We're rolling. So
let's roll this puppy.
All right. So welcome to the second episode of the Dragon's Den podcast. We have myself, Chris Scott here. We got Skippy back with us, and then we got Josh Bork. We have a couple of very great guests today that are going to be joining us. We have retired Assistant Chief Lonnie Spell, and then we've got retired District Chief Gerard Sonnier. They combined for 70 years of experience from the Lafayette Fire Department. These are a couple of guys that I know that any time that they swung by the station, they loved hanging out with the guys. They loved coming, sitting on the couch and telling stories. And I really honestly couldn't think of two better guys to start out the podcast. I'm actually a little bit concerned because I think it might go downhill from here, to be honest. We set the bar a little bit too high. But I'm truly glad that they came on and said yes, and we're on board for this project. So what I'd like to start out by doing is just have these two chiefs introduce themselves, talk about how they got into the Lafayette Fire Department and their kind of the journey into the fire service. So Chief Sonnier, we're gonna start with you. Thank you for coming on.
Oh, thanks for having me. Yeah, my journey, like some guys, like Josh, my dad was a firefighter in Crowley, and I followed his career, the whole time as a child, stayed at the station the whole time. So it was meant to be. And I got on at 19 in 1982. Came on the line, worked at Station 3 as a tailboard jockey for about 2.5 years. Then I made driver, went to Station 5 for about 6 years. Then I made captain right after that. So I was a captain almost 18 years.
It's a long time.
At Station 5. And then made DC and finished my career as a DC, almost doing 10, 11 years as a district chief.
Yeah. And I'm sure we'll talk about how long you were on, how long you were district chief, and how you really fell into that position. You really enjoyed that spot, and you hung on to that spot, and that's definitely something we can get into. So,
yeah.
All right, Chief Spell.
I graduated from high school in '84, and so when I got out, I didn't even realize there was a all-field boom and fall. I never thought about it. Too young to know. So I wanted to be a welder. So my plan was to go to welding school, and I had a good friend. His dad was a welder, and he said, "No, you're doing it all wrong." He said, "Listen, you need to go to drafting school first. Learn that side of it. And the goal is a fab shop, not welding underneath pipe when you're 40, 50 years old." So I took his advice, and I went to Votech, drafting school. So it was a 2-year course, and we were about to finish, and our instructor said, "Look, guys, they're laying off experienced draftsmen. They're shutting down machine shops. Nobody's welding. Nobody's drawing anything." So I had to find another job. My uncle was a dispatcher with the city fire department. So he said, "Well, they're hiring a few firemen every now and then, but you better hurry because when all field crashes, they all come." So I did, and I was hired in '88, August 4th of '88. And so I didn't chase fire trucks as a kid, and I'm not demeaning that, but some guys did, and they've been having a passion since they was a kid. I didn't. I don't know if I ever thought about fire trucks. And so I got hired. I was happy to have a job, and everybody around me just poured that in my head that, oh, it's a good job. I didn't understand retirement. I didn't understand all of the things that you learn so much later. But I just was told so many times it's a good job. And it was. I'd do it all over again.
Right.
Like Josh's dad was hired maybe a year and a half before me, but I followed him through all the ranks pretty much, a year, maybe a year and a half after he got promoted, I was. And so we went through the ranks pretty much about the same time. Mm-hmm. And had the same stories, same experiences. It was a good job, great retirement.
Sure, sure. Now, Chief Sonnier, you said your dad was a fireman. Where was he a fireman at?
My dad was a fireman in Crawley. Crawley was, yeah. My dad did 46 years on the fire department. He used to tell the stories when he first got on. The trucks were chain driven. They had a Chrysler. That was the first truck he was on. But the thing was with my dad, I was sleeping at the fire station when I was 8, 9 years old in Crawley. It's a small town, so I was, I grew up at the fire station. I really did.
He was the fire truck style kind of chased it.
But I really never was, because when I left high school, I started farming and I liked it. And my dad told me I was getting ready to get in the oil field. And my dad told me, oil field's not a good place to be right now. It's getting ready to drop out. And he called me one day and he said, Lafayette's hired. And he said, why don't you go take the test? So I took the test. And I got a call from Lafayette, got into training. Well, I took the test, but I'd also applied in Crawley. Well, Crawley called about maybe a month after I was in training, and they wanted me there. And I was like, no, I'm already, and I stayed in Lafayette. But I never really had the aspirations to be a firefighter. I never thought about it. I never did. It was a job my dad did, But I also had a brother that was a fireman in Crawley too. He retired as a district chief. Oh. So it was,
Now, back in the day, in 82, 80, 86, during that time, that was during the time period where you had hundreds of applicants looking for 5 jobs? Was that still kind of the case?
It was when with me, because the oil field had crashed.
Right.
We had people from all over the country. When I got hired, we had people from Cincinnati, Boston, and they hired. The reason I got hired, it's a good story, is because they exhausted the list. They hired 15 guys, and I never got called. But one of the guys flunked the test because of his back, and I was the last one on the list. That's why I got hired. Wow. Well, we got one guy left, and that's how I got hired. So I really didn't make the cut the first time.
Jeez.
So
was that the same kind of story in?
Yeah, the oil field was crashed.
It was already crashed. It was crashing during his time, and yeah,
it was crashed. And so when I took the test, I don't remember how many applicants there were, but I had to split it into 2 days to process all of them. I mean, the agility test. And that was at Cajun Field.
That says a lot. Just the fact that it was a Cajun Field, you got hundreds of guys for.
I mean, if I remember, there may have been 80 people doing agility tests.
Did you now? Obviously, your dad was a connection to help you get into Lafayette. Chief Spell, did you had somebody to kind of help you boost the process a bit?
My dad's high school classmate was a CEO at the time.
A CEO of a company.
Of the city of Lafayette.
Of the city of Lafayette. Okay, a mayor style.
And
position.
he always told my dad, if you need something, let me know. And
yeah.
So my dad asked me how it was going, and I said, well, I'm waiting. I call the chief's office every now and then, and they just keep telling me you're on the list. So he called, and that's how it made it happen. That's how it happened.
Huh.
And I was the opposite. I was the only one in my class that didn't have a political connection. We started talking one day. Everybody said, "Well, this person called for me. That person called." I was the only one, and like I said, the only reason I got there is because they exhausted the list. Yeah. Well, we got one guy left. We'll call him up, and
It's funny, when I got hired on, we heard all these stories, right? We heard the hundreds of applicants for 4 spots. Mm-hmm. And like, if you didn't know somebody, like, you, it was going to be a problem. But for, when I had come on, I didn't know anybody. It was the oil field was doing really, really well. I think oil was like $120 a barrel or something right around the time I came on. So they had nobody. So when I came on, I knew nobody on the fire department. I didn't even know how to get on the fire department. So it's funny that contrast of, when it basically runs like the oil field runs. When the oil field's doing great, you kind of got to scrap for applicants. And when it crashes, a lot of people show up.
And I didn't even know I had a political connection until my dad said, he's one of my classmates. Yeah. And he called him, and then I get on the fire department, and I'm hearing all these stories. Like, the majority of people got hired that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Except for people like, Gerard Story every now and then, or like the Greg Broussards.
Oh.
They didn't know which one to hire, so they hired all 3 of them in the same class.
Yeah. This is with our department. You got a bunch of Greg Broussards that just hired the wrong one over and over.
Yeah, 3 in one class.
And 3 in one class. We'll get them eventually. You just shotgun blast, and we'll catch one of them.
Yeah.
They got the right one though.
It is a thing.
Yeah.
Political.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I have a question for you. So you get hired on. What was training like? your academy? What was that like?
Well, I'm not sure about Lonnie, but with the I was still at the old training center when we
I was too.
and when I got in the train officers and everything, and the training was basically like it is today. A lot of agility and skill test, and basically like it is now. It hadn't changed much.
How long was it, Chief?
I want to say we did 2 months. I don't think it was as long because I mean now that there's more in it with the hazmat and this and that didn't come about with the department until later. So we didn't go through the hazmat part of it and that stuff. So I want to say it was maybe 2 months.
I was wondering kind of the same thing. I remember he sells fire gear. Bert.
Yeah,
I remember
Bert Gilbert.
when he came on, he was telling a story that when he came on, his academy was 2 weeks in Lafayette, and it was the first week was just cutting grass. So you had a week of cutting grass and a week of how to be a fireman,
Oh, yeah.
and then they kick you out to the line. And I was wondering, obviously now it depends on the number of people, but it's up to like maybe 4-ish months or so.
Yeah.
So that's a drastic evolution of
No, it was a good training class, but they gave you all the tools you needed. You were ready, but the department wasn't as detailed as it is now. You know what I'm saying? It's just a lot more aspects to it now with like I said, with the hazmat, more medical and stuff like that.
Josh, when I was hired, they didn't have a class for me. They just hired for a vacancy. A district chief was retiring, Jesse Gautreaux, and I was hired in that vacancy. So my class wasn't hired yet. So I was at Station 1 doing whatever duties for 4 months till my class was hired. But I remember the 3 assistant chiefs, every one of them said, we didn't even have an academy. They gave us a jumpsuit and sent us to the station, and they trained us at the station.
Wow.
Train as you go. That's what it was.
Literally on the job.
OJT.
On the job. OJ.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not too shocking because when you talk about the volunteer departments, and I know when you keep going further back and forth, that's the evolution. It starts out when I was in Doosan, they once they say, okay, you made these three meetings, you don't want this guy, okay, good, okay, here's a pager and some gear, show up when it goes off. I'm positive Lafayette went through that exact same evolution of starting out as volunteers, and then it was just kind of, hey, if we can get you to show up, it's a natural build.
Exactly.
That makes sense to me.
My academy was a lot like Gerard's. Same thing, like we didn't have as much hazmat training because it wasn't mandatory.
Wasn't a thing then.
And we didn't have as much EMR, wasn't mandatory. We did CPR and that kind of stuff, bleeding control and stuff, but not like you have now. And but man, our training officer was exceptional.
Who was that again?
Jeff Hildreth.
Oh, yeah.
And
Jeff
we
came
would-
on with me. Jeff was from Cincinnati. He was the guy from Cincinnati that got on the department with me.
And there was another guy named Dan Eggleston who was an arson investigator, but he would come assist sometimes. And they were excellent, man. They were great teachers. They knew their job, and they could teach it.
Hildreth is one of those guys that I'm trying to get a hold. I say trying to get a hold of him. He's definitely on my radar to have come in because I don't remember. It might have been you, Chief Spell, that talked about. It was one of you that talked about when they would do search training. He would do the by the book training, and he would say, "All right, that's not really how we search. I got to teach all that, but that's not really how we search." When you search, I think it was you, Chief Spell.
Yeah.
That when you search, it needs to be like your family's in there.
Yeah, right.
It's a rapid kind of just a quick and aggressive process, but it was nothing like what he just taught y'all, which was and I remember talking to you about it going, man, I had that. At some point we lost that. At some point we lost that. We got kind of really ingrained in the Jones and Bartlett and the IFSTA where we're just hanging on to each other's boots and sweeping with the tools. We never got the other side. We lost it. What Hildreth was doing was saying like, okay, we got that for the test. That's what we need to do. Okay, here's what's really going to happen. We lost the here's what's really going to happen part. And I'd like to have him on to talk about some of that.
He taught us how to pass the written and practical. And he said, okay, you got it? You can pass it? All right, now here's how you really do it. When you have really need to save somebody.
Yeah, that's the Jeff you know. The Jeff I know, you need to ask him about the iodine story.
Okay.
I was getting married, and on the Saturday we were in training, so I was coming back the Monday, because I had to be, we couldn't miss. So that Friday, Jeff came with a big bottle of iodine, and he said, at the end of the day, we're going to pull your pants down, and we're going to put iodine all over your crotch. That way your wife has something to look at. for the honeymoon. And every time I look across the room, he'd be shaking that bottle. And I thought he was just joking. Well, sure enough, the end of the day, they opened the fire hydrant and they threw me in front of the hydrant and washed me down the ramp a ways. And then they come pull my pants down and he poured that stuff on me, but it was actually just colored water. So that's the Jeff. That's the Jeff I know. But Jeff was exceptional. He really was, because there was 15 of us. I come out second in my class, but Jeff was head and shoulders above me. You know what I'm saying? He had it coming on. You know.
Yeah, that's the thing. He was. It felt like he was already. It seemed like he was already plugged in.
Yeah, he was, because he had been in Cincinnati, bigger department and stuff like that, and he had it. You know what I'm saying? He was one of the guys that we looked up to.
Yeah, I'm definitely interested to talk to him now.
Yeah, and we were at
He's
the
a
old
great
training
guy,
center.
very intelligent, very.
And he did a lot of things that really mattered. Like we had the half-hour air packs, and we'd put them on. We had to do it with the proper steps and the time and everything. And he said, again, that's what's going to get you to pass, but this is what's going to help you live. So we'd pack up, turn the bottles on, everything, mask up, and then he'd turn all the lights off and walk out. And say, just lay down, sit down, whatever you do, and just breathe.
And those are the steel bottles too back then.
Yes.
And so we did that a lot. And after a while, it really made a difference because you just was so comfortable in that air pack, and it wasn't scary. You didn't worry about whenever your bell went off, I need a panic, So he did a lot of stuff that mattered.
Right. It seems like, sticking to the Jeff theme, it's so often I've heard it so many times when you come out of training, they go, all right, forget everything you learned in training. We're going to teach you how to do it. And the teaching you the real way often lacked. Like they would oftentimes it would get told, we'll teach you how to do it. And then so you come out as a rookie, you're really excited, like, oh man, I'm gonna learn how to really do the real way. And then it kind of fizzled. But Jeff seemed like he was catching that in the academy. We teach you both ways right now.
Exactly.
While we got you here, which is so good.
And it mattered so much, Chris, with those old air packs. You had a tube on the mask,
Elephant.
but it was some coarse threads. And when you went in, there was a nut, and you only turned it like 2.5 times, and it sealed. Mm-hmm. We did that so much with our eyes closed and in the dark. I thought it was so silly that, oh man, I've done this 200 times. It's enough. Well, Ron Gilmore and I were in the fire on Turlings, and we're going up the stairs, and somehow his came out, and then he grabbed it, put it right back in.
Muscle
In a
memory.
smoky environment, and everything, no panic, anything. So it made a difference.
Yeah, that's so good. We think that that goes on to a whole nother conversation. We think we're a lot. We can go on for a while on that. We think that we're a lot better than we are. I know for a long time I definitely thought I was a lot better than I was, and we think that when it comes down to it, we'll be able to do it. Like we don't need to get in the dark and train and do all this stuff, because like I know what I'm doing. I got it. But in reality, if you have not done it, you're likely to panic. But that muscle memory of doing that thing over and over, it just proves the point of what you got to do.
We delve too much a lot. I've always said that we delve too much on advanced firefighting and advancing ourselves. And the basics are what we forget. You'd be surprised. Something like that. The basics are what we put aside.
Yeah.
I've realized that a lot through the department, through things I've got caught up in. It was like, oh gosh, what I'm saying? I got to go back and look at this.
Yeah, I thought
I had this. You forget it because you're moving on with, like I said, with hazmat and the other things, and and you forget your basics.
And those air packs, that was the worst sound you could hear at a fire. If it came out, everyone in the house knew what that sound was.
Bypass valve would open.
So when it came out, everyone knew. But Jeff had taught us to index it with your finger. You put it over your regulator, and you feel everything, and you grab it, and you put it right back in. And so it, maybe a second, we heard it, and went right back in like, okay, he's good. We all knew if you heard it, it was bad. If you didn't hear it, it was good.
Quality. It seems like Jeff, he cared. He knew that it was a problem.
Well, he was a firefighter.
He wasn't just, exactly.
He was.
It wasn't.
He lived it.
I'm just here for a paycheck. I'm going to move these guys through, and I'm going to let somebody else worry about them on the other side. He cared early enough to try to solve some of those problems and potentially save your life once you moved on,
Or like when we climb ladders. Every time, 102%. When you climb the ladder, he would tell you, head up, butt out, every time. And so now my son and I are setting up a deer stand in the woods, and I'm fussing at him, head up, butt out.
Even to this day.
Yeah.
Even to this day.
But it does make you climb better, and he just beat it in our head, you know.
Yeah, it's good to have guys that cared. That's what it seemed. He cared. He gave a shit.
I felt like I was well trained. I really did.
Excellent.
And I think that's what Chris touched on, and you as well, Gerard, is brilliance in the basics. If you can master those basics and be good at them, then you can progress to the more advanced skills. And then when something does happen, like you say, your air pack malfunctions, you can fix it right away because you've been brilliant in those basics.
You're not out the game.
Yeah,
Still
working on
effective.
your air pack, throwing ladders, stretching lines, those things that you're repetitively working on.
And like you said, it should be muscle memory because we don't have time to think about it or
Exactly.
go back and scratch our head and open a book. When those things happen, it's got to be, quick.
And we didn't know, as recruits, we didn't know what a smoky environment was like. We could only create one with hay, sometimes, or a smoke machine. But Jeff would tell us, a breath of that and you're going down. And it's true. It really is true. A breath of all those toxins and you're going down.
And there's so many. So I can go so far in this. We just had. I say we. The Station 8 just had a rescue recently where it was a really nasty environment, and our guys Jesse Araby had dropped in from an elevated window. When he hit mask, it was a gigantic drop. It was 5 foot from down in, and I talked to him about it, and he said when his mask came off, he literally said, I took one breath, and I wanted no part of that. He said I was scrambling to pull the mask back on. You don't want to fumble around while eating multiple breaths of this stuff because your panic's only going to get panic's only going to get much worse. All right, so I want to shift off to some of the old stories because we can go down this training and good at your job path for a long time. One of the things we had kind of discussed is I want to talk about the older trucks that you guys had driven and possibly the transformation going from what y'all did drive into what y'all have now. So I was going to kind of let y'all take off on where you started, Chief. Sonnier.
And like I said, I was a tailboard jockey. I got on at Station 3 and there was no jump seats on none of the trucks or anything like that. But when they started getting those Macs in, they had jump seats. So my goal in life is to graduate to a truck that had a jump seat. You know what I'm saying?
And then we all want to go back.
Exactly. And the tailboard was just something that, it was a rite of passage. Just like I was going to say, if Lonnie remembers that, when we got on the line, you didn't come on with your uniform. You came on in coveralls. You stayed on in coveralls. You had to earn that uniform for a year. So that you knew who the rookies were. You didn't have to look around. That's him. But the yellow trucks, when I got to 5 as a driver, they were like Corvettes. They were just fast and quick, and it was simple. It was just simplicity. You know what I'm saying? Now I think the trucks got more computerized and this and that, but I don't feel they got better because those Macs were just built for firefighting. They handle well. They were small. They got the job done. Right.
You had told me a story about when you first came on that somebody had asked you to reach underneath the seat and grab some grass.
I told you that.
Yeah, that was Lonnie.
Go ahead, Chief.
That was Truck 27. It was built at 63. And I went over there to drive a train, and the original seat was there, and Ron Broussard said, stick your hand up and then pull out some grass, straw, or whatever he said. And I said, what is straw doing under there? He said, well, I don't know, but it was there when they built it. That was the original foam, today's foam. That was the original cushion, and that 63 was straw.
Wow. You said you pulled out some hay, and I was like, ain't no way hay was in there.
And so then not long after that, they rebuilt it. I don't know if they sent it off or did it here, but they refurbished it, and it came back with a new seat.
Yeah. Oh,
It was just simplicity. It's like I don't know if you remember. It's like these trucks now. We call it sneezing. The trucks would bleed their own air brakes.
Yeah.
We had to get up one thing you had to do in the morning was on your work chart. You had to bleed your air brakes.
Yeah,
you had to get under the truck. You had a cable hanger. Yeah. And you had to bleed your air brakes.
They had a cable hanging with a loop.
Well, before they had the cables, you had to get under there actually and turn the knob.
Oh, I was.
all that
And when the
nasty,
cables
rusty
come out, that
water.
was state of the art because we could use the pipe poles. Then,
It was great when I got on it. It had a cable.
Oh no!
And you use a pipe pole and pull it.
I was pre-cable.
Now with the automated system, you don't even have to deal with that.
You spoiled children.
Yeah,
with
well, yeah.
like,
You had to wear it. You had to open it, wear it.
Did you think Gerard's going back in my day?
Back
We had to
then.
crawl
I
under
changed
there.
in 6 years. I had a uniform when I graduated.
Oh,
Yeah.
they couldn't even
And a
identify.
badge.
You could hide.
I had a uniform.
no,
You don't even know who the rookie is
That's
anymore.
what's bad. With coveralls, you couldn't blend. They
Yeah.
knew who you were. You was worthless. They knew it. I knew it. They knew it.
Did you when they moved away from the riding the tailboard? Did you ever look at the guys that didn't have to ride tailboard? Like, oh, he's not a real fireman because he never rode tailboard.
Well, it's
before.
true. Not to name any names, but when the guys would say, "Can I ride in the cab?" When I was a captain, "Can I ride in the cab with you? It's cold." I said, "Cold? You don't know cold. Wait till it's raining and you're sitting on a tailboard and it's cold." So that jump seat is nice.
Tucked up kind of near the engine, if you could manage it. You had also said that once again coming, I'm not from that era, so you talked about even when guys would go through OJT that you got a guys training to be a driver, and so you're spending hours and hours on the road, and you're just riding around on the back of a fire truck. It's like a garbage man. You're
Trying to look cool, and it was hard. It was hard to look cool riding back there.
Guess where the exhaust goes?
Yeah.
Exactly right. And then they're hitting curves, and and throwing you up in the air, and it's.
Yeah, it was a lot of react. You couldn't plan. It was a reaction because on the back you were blind.
Mm-hmm.
So if the front of the truck, it was I guess the weight of the truck, you can't feel it. So if the front of the truck went in a depression, you really couldn't feel it until it came out from under you.
That's it.
Or you hit the railroad tracks and threw you up, and then I complained one day about, man, it's rough, and the old captain screamed at me, well, hold on. I was.
At 13, it was who was it? Was it? I don't want to say the wrong name, but he's definitely retired. But anyway, I remember they had a bunch of slack in it. One of the old, I think it might have been, we called it 3A, but it was like old 3, right? Engine in the center. There was just a ton of play. I remember looking at the captain and I said, "Hey, Cap, there's a ton of play in this steering wheel, like a ton." He goes, "Well, then play with it." I was like, not going to send it to the shop or anything. Play with it.
Deal with it.
Yeah, that's I kind of got the same, like, well, hold on.
Yeah.
I almost died back there, Cap. Like,
simple.
And
Hold on
these
tighter.
trucks too, so they were they're all standards. There's not any automatic trucks. So
Nope, they were
pretty sure you had
standard.
a double clutch in two.
That's another thing with the yellow trucks. When we got to 5, they were 5 was an automatic, and that thing was. I mean, it was lightning fast. It was unbelievable.
547 when I was hired was an automatic.
Yeah,
And they
the
were
automatics
fast.
come out. Look, it changed everything.
Yeah.
I mean, we had to learn to double clutch and downshift all the aerials. And saying I got good at it because you were doing it all the time. But it's when you had to train people to do it. I had one guy I trained. I'm not gonna say any names. You know who I'm talking about. I took him out all morning, and look, he grind gears all morning. He just about had it for lunch. He was getting it. Went back after lunch. Horrible, like starting over. He got so fed up with it, we had to stop in front of Dependable Dodge so he could throw up. He was that
That frustrated.
He said, "I got to throw up." He was that tense about it, and they were hard. They were hard to ship. Like truck 27, he was a gas, and it was hard to shift. It was. You almost had to be in it all the time, and you had to spend time with these guys, and
Like being an operator back then, or engineer, driver, whatever you call your guys at your department, it's a lot different. Now we got all the electronics, and I mean some of these trucks they have now. Like one of my friends works in a Fluent department, and they got these trucks that got iPads on the pump panel. But back then it was like you had to know what your truck sounded like. You had to know mechanically, like it's a lot more in depth than it is now.
Our iPad was a friction loss calculator, if you remember those things
Yeah.
with the cards, and it was the closest thing
You
to
had
an
a little
iPad.
compartment on the pump panel with a friction loss calculator.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
I don't want to say I'm from the old days, but I remember those days.
Yeah.
Matter of
Yeah.
fact, I believe they're in most trucks.
And they were amazingly accurate.
Yeah.
The friction loss calculator.
It got a little tricky. I don't want to go too deep down the rabbit. It got a little tricky because we started swapping nozzles and
right.
low pressure fog. So it used to be the standard 100 psi fog, and it just kind of worked everywhere. And now we have different psi low pressure fogs of different types of different styles. So it's not as easy to slide across. But yeah, those are still up there.
Crazy to see
You had
how
to adjust to
close
your
technology's
captain
gone.
because it was always the thumbs up. He'd orchestrate it. You
Yeah.
look at it, it was up and down. So each captain was different, could handle more load. So it's
Throttle up until you hear screaming, and then come
Throttle,
back, and then
yeah,
go
right.
back down a little
Half
bit.
But Gerard was right, man. Those trucks were not only fast, they were smaller, they were maneuverable, and they were built by a firefighter. Because when you were sitting in that jump seat, you were looking backwards. When you stepped up, the hose bed was right there. You could grab hose and you could walk off the truck with the hose. You didn't have to get off and go and reach up and grab it. Mm-hmm. So everything about those trucks were fast firefight trucks. Mm-hmm. You know, they were designed for an aggressive attack, really.
Right. I think they got so big, they got so much stuff on them now. They're trying to, you know, keep basically the same size and shape, mm-hmm. but they're having to make adjustments for extra waterways and extra tools, and it's probably not quite as quick. If that's just my guess.
And those Macs were tough.
Never broke down.
You could grind the gears on them. Everybody would drive, you know, their driver training, and they were tough. And the automatics going, you know, when you were going through the gears, they would shift just as hard as when you were coming down. Mm-hmm. You know, you feel every gear, and then coming down, and it never broke.
It was almost like rodeo riding. You had to make sure your seatbelt was tight. I'd cinch up my belt because, look, you're going in a light and you're changing lanes. Look, hold on. You know, it's coming. They were fast, and they would kick back when they hit that second or third gear. They'd kick you back. Wow. They were that quick. You know, unbelievable.
I was telling you we were talking about those tailboard trucks, and I feel sorry for the rookies now. They don't get to ride with Kevin Crater. Okay. He was a driver at 8, and it was a tailboard truck.
Right.
Well, every day he would get up there and put water up in the tank, and he'd act like he was just filling the tank. Well, then the tarp over the hose bed, you know, had valleys in it, and he'd fill that up too. So
extra water.
Station 8, when you come out, it's coming down like this, but once you hit the road, it levels off. And us rookies right on the back, and as soon as it leveled off, it's so cute. You'd hear Kevin laughing in the front.
After what, 1 or 2 soaks, you realize
you picked it up,
and
you let it drain off, and it was good.
Yeah. If it was raining, you'd get under it most of the time.
You get underneath it when it was raining.
Did he ever give up? Like, okay,
no,
spell's back there. No. He's gonna. Nope. He filled up every time.
Yep.
Just hoping you forgot.
Yep. It's kind of sinister.
Yeah, I think it's a great guy.
You want to make sure you had something to cool off with.
That's it.
But you got all of that road grime and that water. Oh.
Multiple changes of clothes, I would imagine, that you had at the station ready to go.
Yeah.
You said you got something called a silly seat. I wrote that down.
Truck 27, we'd go driver training, and for some reason, somebody put a seat in the middle of the hose bed. You'd ride in the middle of the hose bed. It was a single cab truck, and you had to ride in there while they were driver training. So it looked like you didn't belong. It's just like you were in the middle of a truck. You know what I'm saying? It's like having a seat in the middle of a battleship. That thing was so long, you know. And you're just sitting there. People would look at you like, what's he doing right there?
Like a turret gunner.
Oh, yeah. I tried to cover myself with my coat. I was so embarrassed, you know.
You didn't just sit there and kind of...
Oh, yeah. Well, that's what we called it, the silly seat. Because you look silly.
Now, why'd they put that up there? What was the intent? What was the purpose?
I think some guy thought, well, you know, I'm not going to... We got a driver train, so we need to put it somewhere to put the driver while this guy's training. You know what I'm saying? I was like, what am I, you know?
It's the middle of the hose bed.
Middle of the hose bed.
That is amazing.
The silly seat. Truck 27. It was an old Mac, huh? 27. Yeah.
It was a Mac. In fact, the department was 100% Mac.
It was a ladder. It was a ladder truck. It wasn't aerial. It was a little ladder. Mm-hmm.
So a couple other notes that you had sent. The line gun. I'd never heard of a line gun until y'all talked about it. And I was like, wait, what? Actually, I did hear about it. We did rope rescue. I think Hodges had talked about a line gun, and but I didn't know we had one. I didn't know we had one back then. We don't have one now.
Oh, so. We had one on 5, and we have to test. We never tested it or not. I always look at it and admire it, but we never got to fire it. Well, and I just found out from Lonnie they got to fire it.
It was tested.
First of all, tell for the people that don't know what a line gun is, what's the idea behind it, and why do we have it?
Well, it's actually a shotgun, and it had a spool of twine underneath it. And when you'd shoot it, it would shoot a projectile and shoot the twine where you needed to go, and then you tie the other end to your rope and pull it where it needs. And that's basically, but like I said, all I got to do was check it. I never got to play with it.
Yeah, and the box was closed.
Envious,
like they would tell us, don't touch it. Leave it alone. Just make sure it's there.
The fire truck told the fireman not to touch it.
Yeah, and so we had an engineer. I won't say his name, but he left. unexpectedly. But he'd party all the time and he'd sleep in the morning. So his captain got on him and said, "Hey, listen, you gotta check your truck. Detailed check your truck." So I was still I think your dad was with me. And so we inside cleaning up and we hear a boom outside and we all run outside and he shot the line gun. He said, "You told me to check my truck."
That was probably the end of the line gun because I'm sure they couldn't get parts for it or another spool of twine.
That was the end of the line.
And like I told you, they had a trampoline.
Yes.
And we trained with it.
That was actually the next thing on
Y'all
my
had a
list.
trampoline?
Yeah, but nobody jumped on it. But we
did.
We
No,
would
they-
hold
no,
it.
we
You know.
did.
No, we did jump on it in 5. We jumped from the top of 5 onto it. Everybody had to jump.
Once again,
Wow.
just to clarify for anybody that may not know it, this is like the old circus when the circus clowns would bring out and there's a fake building.
Yeah, it
on
had a target
fire.
in the middle.
Yeah, a target in the middle. We've seen these in the circus before. We had one of those. It was for people to jump out of buildings and we would catch them. So
We would test it, and then one day decide we were going to use it. You know, we'd always take it out and dry it and make sure everything was clean. And one day we were going to jump from the top of 5. Everybody's going to jump on it, so we did. And you know, everybody kind of jumped leisurely, kind of landed on your sitting down position. But William comes, he's going to get a running jump, William Ritchie, and do like a Rumazuma, like holding his leg kind of thing, And when he hit, all the springs broke on it. I'll never forget that. He hit the ground hard because my arms felt like they were giving out, so I kind of let go. I can say that now. And William ended up on the ground and cursing. But that was the last. After that, we couldn't replace it because you couldn't find anything to replace it. So
Wow.
probably that's I think William did it on purpose. He didn't want to look at it again.
Yeah.
I
So
feel like this is a trend. Don't go check it. Make sure we have it. Don't use the thing. Don't use the thing. And as soon as we use it, it breaks. And
It breaks.
we get rid of
Breaks.
it.
Never
Yeah,
use it
well,
again.
the springs flew when
Yeah.
William hit it. I'll never forget that.
Really
It was just
interesting
too
to
much
see
force.
where those ended up at, like that line gun or the trampoline, like whatever happened to them.
Museum somewhere.
I don't know.
They're still around.
I don't know what happened to them. Things would come off of the truck and stay at station 1 in the warehouse for months or years,
Yeah.
and then it eventually go away. I don't know where they'd go.
I bet. Even when I first came on, that back storage shed had so much. I don't want to call it antique, but it had so many old things. Like,
Yeah, we
man,
had wood
still-
ladders in there.
What are we still using this for? Just recently, I don't know if y'all know. I think it was for ratings. Like we were able to get rid of some like hose jackets and stuff. That those jackets were there for forever, and I think the rating had changed and was like, okay, we can finally start pulling. But it's probably in the back, and it's going to be there for the next 40 years.
Oh yeah.
And people are going to look at it and go, what is this? Like a geologist digging up a fossil. What is this old thing?
Antique stuff. There's so many agencies like, we'll get the new, latest, and greatest, and the old stuff gets tossed, and you never see it again, and we lose so much history.
Yeah.
Just doing stuff like that. And for those that might be listening that might not know what we're talking about with the rating, is like that's like our version of ISO. Louisiana has a specific system like ISO that we use to rate our departments, which is why we had to keep a lot of old stuff on the trucks that never get used.
What I learned about ISO, and I'm sure Chiefs y'all know too, is I learned that everything that we do on the fire department is based around ISO. It's like, why do we put fire trucks in covered? Oh, it's because of ISO. Why do we build them in certain? It's because of ISO. Why is the pump so much? It's because everything that we do in a fire department is essentially built around that rating.
Exactly.
Talking about old stuff, I want to switch to the wooden ladders. Obviously, we don't have them. We've never had them, but the wooden ladders and the changing the chapel lights. And,
Oh my gosh.
yeah.
That was the tormentor poles.
Yeah.
With the tormentors?
Yeah, we had a 50-foot wooden ladder with tormentor poles, and it was heavy. And we would do a church raise. The one we did was a church off of Johnson Street. We'd go, and when they would say that, I was like, oh gosh, who's gonna have to climb this thing?
Yeah.
And at the time, it don't look like now, but I was probably one of the lighter guys, so I was the one that usually have to climb. Me or Kurt. And basically, you'd put it on in. Now you're on a marble floor. We'd put a rug down. We'd put down and a tarp, and it would sit on in. And you had 4 guys holding it with tormentor poles now. And this was probably stretched up to about 40 feet,
Like
straight up,
Yeah, it's
and change a light bulb from the top of that thing.
So how many
locked in?
How many firemen does it take to change a light bulb?
Yeah, well,
At least 5.
at least 5, and one captain watching for when it would go in which direction he was going in when it started falling.
Yeah.
So look, the wooden ladders too. When I made captain, we first went to truck 27, and we had to redo all the ladders. I don't know how often it was. 3 or 4 years, we had to sand them down, take everything off of them, repaint them, paint the ends, everything, and then reseal them.
Yeah, you remember the ends were painted white?
Exactly
The last
right.
2 or 3 rungs?
And we did these ladders when that was my first time ever doing that. We redid those ladders and they were beautiful. And then here comes the testing. We had to test ladders. He splintered about half of them.
Oh.
He splintered them. I was like, oh, that was a lot of work well spent. A lot of time well spent redoing them.
Didn't they make y'all go over the top of it? They would extend it out, and you had to actually.
That was one of our tests in training. You had to climb to the top and then switch over to the other side and climb down the other side.
With guys balancing this.
With guys
thing.
balancing.
Right. Just a lot of trust there.
Oh, it was a lot.
Well, but you're 20 years old. I was 20 years old. Like, it's different
Yeah.
when you're young.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It really is.
Bulletproof.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And it's a challenge.
Yeah.
But that was.
But yeah, we treated them with linseed oil. We, like Gerard said, strip them and clean them. And I remember climbing one of them, set up next to a building, and the district chief was there. They was like, man, these rungs are creaking. And he said, well, put some more linseed oil.
The fix all.
They were heavy. That's all I can tell you. When aluminum ladders came around, it was like, thank goodness, because they were heavy.
You had told a story, Chief, and this goes, instead of silliness, this goes on to a little more of a serious. I like the story so much. I had never heard you tell it in all the conversations we have had. But you talked about Walter Landry.
Oh yeah.
And I feel like that needs to be said. So I'd like you to kind of go into that.
Well, Walter and Ken Guidry were my 2 inspirations, like as far as the engineer rank, and Ken Guidry also in the captain's rank too. But they were both so truck dedicated. They knew the trucks, man. Those trucks were spotless all the time, but they worked too. I mean, they made sure they worked. And so I was paying attention. Walter, we worked at two 12-hour days, a 24 and 2 12-hour nights. So every time Walter got on the truck, he was putting water at the top of the tank to fill it up, like Kevin Crater did, but for not the same reasons. But I didn't see a lot of water under the truck, So one day I said, Walter, does it leak that much? Because I see you do it every day. And he says, no, it doesn't leak that much, but when we go to a fire, I want 505 gallons. And man, I remember that was such an impact on me and he said, that 5 gallons might mean a fireman or a taxpayer. Man, that made a big difference to me. Like, he wants it at the top. Now, he wasn't in there fighting the fire. He wasn't going to make the rescue, but that was his contribution to it.
Powerful.
That was a big deal. So when I retired, they told me I could go to Guidry's and get a retiree badge. But he works there. But I'd seen him through the years there. So I went in and I told him that I reminded him of that story. And he said, man, I did say that. I used to always fill up that thing, 505 gallons.
That's awesome. I think that's so good. It goes to complacency on things like that we let slip, and myself included, where you look at a bottle, it's not quite where it probably needs to be on the air, and you look at it, you go, it's good enough. It's within the department standard. But how important when you talk about stuff like air or water or whatever, it's just about it goes to pride in the job, but also, like you said, it's a pride in the job where it's not even him, it's not his air, it's not his water, it's his guys, it's the mission, it's the mindset. And I love that. I love that type of mindset.
I'm glad you said about the air. You never had to worry when Walter was there. Your air you couldn't fit any more air in the bottle. Right. He made sure your bottles were topped off.
So good.
And when it would get cold,
you'd
lose a little pressure. He'd go and fill them up.
Wow.
But you almost have to be an engineer to understand what he meant by that. Is that 5 gallons, if you were pump testing, you'd never see it. Because we know how fast at capacity, max capacity, how fast you can dump 500 gallons.
It's almost nothing. True.
But when you're using 1.5 inch line, it would make a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think and we can go even deeper on that a little bit, is if you've ever witnessed, even if it's just in video, that your water can would just with just a couple of gallons that are in a water can, that you can put out a considerable, just those 2-ish gallons. I'm actually 2.5 can put so much fire out if you are able to appropriately apply it to the fuel base, right? So when you talk about those 5 gallons, yeah, we've got 500.
Yeah.
But that 5 could matter, but that really wasn't his point. His point was, I'm gonna max this thing out. Every day that we go in, I'm giving you the maximum water that you could possibly
And
get,
air.
and air, right?
Yeah.
And pride and job is
Not settling for
good.
the bare
Well,
minimum.
what I got from that was he was an absolute team player.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was his part of it, and he did it 100%.
And I think what that shows, and it shows you, and then what you pass down is when you hold that standard of excellence. And what he did is he hold that standard of excellence. I'm going to give you all the water, 505 gallons, and then that makes an impact on you. And then you hold the standard, and then it makes an impact on guys that come under you.
Yeah, like when I had a new engineer, we'd go and train on certain things, and to have someone turn off the supply and have them use their tank before they went find a problem. And I would say, you don't want to go to a fireman's funeral with 500 gallons in your tank.
Yeah.
So give them the tank and then go tell someone to find a problem. Don't leave them whenever their hose is limp. Then go find a problem with 500 gallons in it. So I didn't want to go to a funeral with 500 gallons in my tank.
Yeah, that'd be a tough one. It'd be a tough one to take.
I like that, 101, 105% or 505 gallons, putting a little extra in there.
Yeah, maximizing it.
Yeah.
It's good stuff. Next on the list is one thing I thought it was so interesting is that you were spending a lot of time at 5 when you talk about the 5 gutter system. The station is leaking, right? Go ahead.
Well, the thing was, the station, it was pouring rain in the station. So William had the idea we were going to put a gutter system, but it was really kind of to poke fun at everything that was going on because it wasn't being fixed. Because it would actually rain in there so bad, like in the bedrooms. If it was raining, you'd bring your bunker boots with you. Because when you'd get out of bed in the middle of the night, if it was raining hard, you had 2 or 3 inches of water on the floor.
And it was a flat roof in Louisiana.
Yeah. So what we did was we took the Celotex and we kind of bent it down and we run a gutter down the middle.
Inside the station.
Inside the station. And put some downspouts on both walls. And what was written on the buckets? It was a water catch basin.
Aqueduct.
The aqueduct. The aqueduct.
Yep.
But on the aqueduct and on the work chart, it was to empty the aqueduct. You had to empty it.
On the work chart.
On the work chart, you make sure you empty the aqueduct.
It was added.
It was added. So I mean, it was kind of like to poke fun at everything we were dealing with, and well, one day the mayor comes in. I don't remember what mayor it was. I'm not even going to say, but he came in. He saw that. He was looking at everything, and he saw that, and I thought he was going to say, "We need to do something about that." He said, "That's a pretty good idea y'all got there." I was like, okay, so I guess we're not getting fixed, and the bucket's going to be around the wall.
But it worked.
It did. It worked well. You know what I'm saying? You had to make sure you empty your buckets, but
Yeah, I think you had and then you'll have like an engineer come in or somebody to fix the roof. Then they commented like, "Oh, this is
I
that
remember
that it was a good
I was
job."
on Secret at the time. I remember someone coming in. I don't know if it was an engineer or what it was, coming in and not saying a word, just.
Well, farming is always a workaround. It's like I remember, because if y'all know Station 5 in A Crew, they call us the polar bears because it was always freezing in that station. So they came up with the idea that they were going to put covers over the thermostats, some glass-looking covers that locked so we couldn't touch them. And William, one night, that was the first night we had him, he would put one of those...
Mechanics drop light.
You drop light. Right in front of it, so that thing never cut off. He heated up that plastic, and so there's always a workaround.
Always a workaround. Yeah. Well,
You're giving your secrets away.
I'm giving our secrets away.
Hey, look, I heard that as a rookie.
we'll cut this part out. Don't worry about it. We'll never. Nobody's gonna see.
They
it.
would say you can't beat a bunch of firemen. They're too resourceful.
Oh no, they're too resourceful. They got too much time on their hands. That's the thing. The time you got on your hands to think about these things.
Speaking of resourceful, let's hop into one of your favorite, and it's not going to be an official question, but it's just a fun conversation. You're MacGyver. You're a resourceful person, the guy that, if we're stuck in a swamp, Chaffalaya, and you're in a survival situation, and you need You need the guy. You need the fireman that just seems to know everything about everything, and he's gonna get you out. You want that guy in your P-row. Who's the guy you putting in
I
your
don't have
P-row?
to think about it.
Don't even
Ryan-
have to think about
Ryan Seymour.
it. Ryan Seymour. Why, Chief?
He's a CIA agent. I mean, he really is. Like, the guy knows far more than you think he knows. I mean, and he's always 10 steps ahead of you. And when something happens, he's mechanical. He's resourceful. He's a MacGyver.
Yeah.
You know, and like I was telling you one time, we had an apartment fire at New Orleans, and we were on engine 7, and we had a lot of problems with it at the time, and so it died out. But engine 10 had just drove up, so we lost pressure in just a short time. And I can't say if it was 30 seconds or a minute. Ryan already had it figured out. This truck is dead. We're just gonna pump through it. They just hooked up hoses, and engine 10 pumped through it, and we only lost water a minute or so, 2 minutes.
Back up and rolling.
Yeah, back up and rolling. But that was just classic Ryan. Just it's no big deal.
When we had flooded out, talking about Ron, we had flooded out, and I was giving away my cabinets because they were, dumping everything, and he had one of those cabinets. He goes, "Man, I'll trade you cabinets," and I had my old '78 CJ at the time, and I was having. He knew this already. I was having problems with the carb, and he was like, "Yeah, I've already done several rebuilds on carbs like that. I'll swap the cabinet job for the carb." But like, it's almost like anything you like. What are the chances that he knew that he had already done rebuilds on my exact carburetor? It seems like no matter what carburetor I would have had, he would have been like, "Yeah, I've already done those things."
And I have to add another name, Lane Perry. And Lane Perry's just as good. I didn't work with Lane as much.
Yeah.
I don't know if I ever worked with Lane at the same station, but he is just as good in all ways. But I worked with Ryan. Ryan was my driver for a long time, and so that's why I say Ryan first. But my son got hired in 2016, and when he came out of training, he went to 7, and I thought, man, there is no better place for a rookie to go with Lane Perry and Ryan Seymour. Now you're gonna have tough skin to be around those two, but if you want to learn, you can learn so much from those guys.
They got plenty of Lane and Ryan stories that I'm sure we can go into, but we probably will literally have to.
But look, on a fire call, you will appreciate Ryan and Lane.
No doubt. I mean, we did rock crawling with Lane. Lane was you're right. He was a problem solver. He had his rock crawling buggy.
Oh yeah, he
that
is.
tire got stuffed up into the fender, and it was giving him problems. And I'm thinking, oh man, how's he gonna fix this? Pulls a sawzall out the back of the Jeep and just it's like, okay, that's one way.
Yeah.
That would be one way to solve that problem, and it worked.
Mm-hmm.
Just cut the fender well deeper. Oh,
Yeah.
okay, problem solved. We move along. So
Yeah. They're not scared to tear something apart
That's it.
at all.
and
At all.
and put it back together.
Oh, I had a winch on that same 78. I had a winch that wasn't working, and my dad he dug deep as he could to kind of figure out the problem. And then once you get to a certain point, you're like, this kind of past where where I know what I'm doing. So I gave it to Lane. He got that thing working, and I was like, here, if you can fix it, it's yours. He got that thing working immediately. It was either Lane or Ryan. I gave it to one of the two. And sure enough, up and running, 9,000-pound winch, works fine.
Yeah.
But my thought was the same. If I would give this, who's going to be able to figure it out very, very quickly? And of course they did. They knew what they were doing.
Yeah, well, my son has a Jeep, and he brought it to the station, and they rigged it up where you don't have to have a key to start it, but there has to be certain things, like the heater had to be on low or medium or something. And so you press a button and it starts. But if you don't know the sequence, you're not going to start it.
Oh, that's some MacGyver level stuff.
Yep.
That's some bad, that's far beyond what I can do. And when I got that Jeep, talking about, I don't want to go down too deep down the rabbit hole. He was looking in the engine compartment, and it was Perry, and he's going, "You don't need that. Just
Just taking apart your engine.
Yeah, play like the old emission style system, and it was all clogged up with mud. He's like, get rid of that, put a cap on that. I'm like, oh my god, you're going. He was ready to start doing some cutting immediately.
And I'm sure there's a lot more guys on the fire department that
No
are like
doubt.
that. And I could think of a bunch of them, but I just didn't work with them
Yeah.
as much as I worked with them. Like William was like that too.
Yeah, Williams' name keeps coming up, and he's on the list, but I feel like he's gonna have to make an appearance at some point.
Yeah.
But Chief, go ahead. Who's your MacGyver of the fire? You stuck and
There
you
was-
need a dude.
There's so many, but I'd have to go with William because the thing is with William.
There you go.
The thing is with William, if you needed a part or if you needed something, he probably had it in his pocket.
In his pocket.
And I've seen that. I'm not gonna say what we're doing because it could be illegal, but we had a setup at the station and we were monitoring some stuff, and we needed a certain twist lock, and I'd never even seen one before. That's just like cable, like kind of twist lock little thing. So, and we were talking because we wanted to. Well, maybe I can say that we wanted to hook to the main antenna of the station so we could get better reception on what we were doing.
Sure.
Which we shouldn't have been doing this. But I'm sort of statute of limitations that run out on that. So,
You
but
just say
anyway,
allegedly after everything.
allegedly.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
anyway, I said we need a twist lock. And he's like, he pulls it out of his pocket like this. I mean, what are you doing with that in your pocket? I've never even seen one. I thought we'd have to create it. And he had it, so he was just like that, and he was into everything. I mean, the guy was a beekeeper. We had, how big was that aquarium we had, the saltwater?
I know, but he built it.
He built an aquarium. He built
With-
the damn thing, and I'm talking about
With
saltwater.
panels of glass.
Y'all had
Yeah.
an aquarium at the station?
A big one, a big saltwater aquarium.
What'd you have
Probably
in it?
probably
And
$1,000 worth of
And
coral
the
in it.
cabinet that it was on.
Yeah.
Wow.
That was still on when I got there. But when I came on in 08, it was
Yeah.
that aquarium was still there. I don't know if it had fish in it, but it was
Oh,
definitely
it was
still
beautiful. It was beautiful, and look, we spent some money on we use our budget, from Station 5, and there's just the coral, probably thousands of dollars worth of coral in it, But he was just like that. He was anything he put his mind to, he could do.
And I don't.
Stained glass, he'd do stained glass at the station on the table, and just,
I think he's a zombie. He doesn't sleep.
don't sleep, don't sleep.
You'd go to bed at night, and you'd hear he was lathing some. He was building a banister for someone. He had a lathe at the station.
Wow.
Every bed in the bedroom had some kind of William tool underneath it.
That's where we were storing all the stuff.
Yeah.
He had
That's
projects,
amazing.
unloading projects everywhere. I mean, we were out, it was like 11, 12. We got back from a call one night, and I saw someone pass by the window, and he was seeding the lawn. I was like, what? Well, it just rained, so I'm going to seed the lawn. You know what I'm saying? It's just, he's always had something,
And if you first met him, you wouldn't see that in him because you would think that would be like an ADHD person, and he's not that at all. A person moves around and they can't relax. That's not William at all.
No, he's
And
cool, calm, and collected.
could literally light a fire under him and not get him excited. I was on a fire call. We were on a call one day, one time, and it was burning. I was on the pumper, and he come up on the aerial, and I was on the pump panel, and some of the wires were burning from the house. And I saw William walking. It was nighttime, so I saw William walking, because you could tell his walk.
Yeah.
And one of the power lines fell and went to ground when it hit. I mean, it blew. And I figured I'd see William jump. No, he just kept walking. He made it sound like a pig, like
Right.
a loud squeal. And that thing popped probably 20 feet from him. I was like, well, this guy, he just don't get excited, So he was my go-to guy because you couldn't get him excited, and he had the brain, the mindset that he could fix anything, and he would.
He had the answer.
That brings me to that makes me think about so many of the other guys, and y'all can go kind of wherever y'all want with this, about the guys that were, and I'm gonna be totally honest with you, both of y'all were like this. The guys that were cool, calm, and collected, the guys on fires that you couldn't shake. So we didn't put this in the notes, but what did you think about those guys? The guys that I've listened to Chief Gordon, Clyde Gordon out of Houston talk, and he would say, talking about keeping a calm radio presence, and he would say the way that he did it was to he goes, every call that you go on, no matter what it is, he goes, act like you're bored. When you key up, act like you're bored. And then he would say, inside, I might have been like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. But when he goes, when you keyed up, just act like you're bored for the whole thing, and to try to set that tone. So, you talk about William Ritchie just calm as now. He
calm.
might have actually been calm as a cucumber on the inside. He might not have been freaking out at all. But like, what is your experience with guys that, in your mind, were similar to that William Ritchie, and also y'all's take on keeping a calm, fireground mindset?
See, that was like my thing. I used to tell everybody that. They said it seemed like I was calm on fire calls, but I said I'm like a duck gliding on water. I'm just as calm on top, but underneath my little feet are just a kicking. You know what I'm saying? And that was me. You know, I was nerved up, but I wasn't going to show it. You know. But I worked with a lot of guys. One of the guys who was my captain almost my whole career at driving career was Dave Hyatt. Dave was a Vietnam vet. He had saw a lot of, and look, you couldn't shake him up. Him and Don Gula. Don Gula was another one. Look, you'd see him at a fire call. This guy, you could swear he was a walk in the park. You know, we had a commercial fire, filet food. I'm sure that was for y'all time, and he was huge. It was
I've heard
it was huge, and he was on a deck gun, and I was with my captain, and we walked by, and he was standing on a deck gun. He had his helmet on backwards, and he was just sitting on a deck gun. So Dave told him, he said, "Goo," he said, your helmet's on backwards. I know. He just looked at him. I know. He was another Vietnam vet. He was, I think, a sniper in Vietnam. And we just stood there, you know. We took our helmets off. He said, "You better put your helmets on." I put my helmet back on. A big can of beans fell right at my feet. And cans were exploding. You know, I don't know if it was beans, but cans were exploding and falling everywhere. And he realized that. He put his helmet on backwards so he'd have more of a lid in the front to cover his face. Wow. But he never told us that. You know, he just said, "I know that."
Oh, he's going to let y'all go down too, huh? He's gonna...
They'll figure it out. Off the white meat. He said, "You better put your helmet back on." Not why. You know what I'm saying? But look, cool as a cucumber, this guy, you know? So there was guys like that I worked with that, you know.
What about you? What about you, Chief Spell? You got any guys of mention there?
Well, when I was a rookie, Clarence Huval was the assistant chief on Sea Crew. He was like that. He was real calm. But after that, there was a bunch of them. But Gerard was my chief for a while, good while. And it was like that too, you know. Like I'd call him, and it was almost like we would ride in the Jeep together, and no big deal. He didn't bother me because I remember one time we had a call. You and William, I think, were coming back.
Me and William.
They were going on College Saloon, and they saw smoke, and so they called the fire. Him was right by Station 7, and sometimes your radios just don't work. So he's calling me to tell me you need to get out. You know, it's getting bad. But I wasn't getting it. So Morel, Broussard, and I were in there, and then my hose like does this. Well, you know, once maybe twice.
Right.
So then I jerked it back, and we move, and then it does it again, and I jerked it back, and then I'm like, well, who's playing? And I looked underneath this. I had to lay down and look underneath the smoke, and Gerard's kneeling down in the parking lot. But my radio wasn't working, so we came out like, man, the radio wasn't working. And then we had a discussion about the radio. Like, that's why I don't like to bother people, because you gotta find it, get it out, mess with your glove to press the button and talk. Now it's better now.
It's better now.
But he knew that, and like, we didn't need to have a discussion at a fire.
Yeah.
Just give me an assignment and report back. And so that was calming to be with a chief that.
Yeah, no doubt. I got the same feeling for the times that you were. I mean, I want to say you were a district chief for all of the time that I was on A Crew. So it's I got the same feeling that you were one of those calm, collected cats. I want to get to that radio thing because this is a pet beef. We're going to soapbox here for a minute. Is that oh boy, is that we didn't have radio straps for the entire time that y'all were there, right?
What, a pocket?
Yeah, it was always in the pocket, and we've changed that recently. But for the guys that did want to wear a radio strap, the culture of the department was, that's some volunteer shit. Call it all kind of a sissy satchel and all that other stuff. Yeah, you got your purse.
That's my
purse. It was so frustrating that it is the better way. It's clearly the best way to manage a radio.
Exactly.
Far better.
And if you wear it correctly.
If you look, there's different ways, but essentially just having it fall out the top of that coat to where you can just very quickly. Mm-hmm. And it's funny that it was always such a thing that was frowned upon over here. But yet you look up in, you hate to say it, but you look up in the New Yorks and the Bostons, and they all have it. It's like, okay, so is the entire New York Fire Department filled with sissies because they're wearing a sissy satchel? No. Maybe they just figured something out, and y'all haven't come across yet. Thankfully, though, we're past that, because I was thinking the same thing before I had become a captain. Like, to fight that thing out of the you're gonna basically ignore, especially when it's kind of dicey. You're gonna ignore all radio traffic, and you're probably never gonna answer this dang thing.
Yeah.
But thankfully, we've moved past that. But I'm glad you mentioned like I gotta take this thing
Yeah,
out. I
and
gotta
this-
be answered.
This may sound comical, but it's true because I saw it happen a lot of times, and it happened to me. Trying to get that, your straps right here. Yeah, your air pack strap. Then you're trying to get it out of there and everything, and then they fall off. You on the roof, they fall down the roof. You lose them
Yeah.
and they fall, or in a house they fall, and now they're full of soot. So I think the radios are gonna last longer.
Oh, they
They
will.
won't get damaged as much
Oh.
because they're not falling off the roof or
They're-
out of the aerial. Or
There's a certain captain that had a very expensive radio, and he was adamantly against himself carrying that radio strap. But a lot of guys, a lot of people in his orbit had the radio straps, and we had told him multiple times, hey, the radio strap is really the way to go. It's like the way for safety, for efficiency, for communication. It's the way to go. Didn't want to hear it, didn't want to hear it, didn't want to hear it. And then he lost that very expensive radio on a fire call. And then I think he eventually switched over after, sending a $4,000 radio down, into a pile of rubble. So
But
So my,
that's
my
typical.
question to you, Chief, is, or both of you, was anybody wearing those at the time?
Well,
Especially back in the day.
I don't
That-
remember.
We wore them with hazmat because we had them in hazmat because we were actually inside your suit when you put a class A, a level A suit on, but you could still work it from the outside of the suit because it was in, if you remember right.
Yeah, didn't we have a device that sends a kit where you
Yeah,
fit it to your ear?
Yeah, that's right. It was like worked off an ear mic.
Yeah.
But we were wearing them early on. And I thought they were great. But I was going to say, it's typical though with the fire service. We mock what we don't understand. You know what I'm saying? And if you're the
believe you
first
me.
guy to do it, that's
Look
what
at the guy.
Yeah, you gotta take
who
your
this guy
licks.
thinks he is.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I was never like that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? If it works for him, that's fine. You know what I'm saying?
It's like what they say: the two things firemen hate is the way things are and change.
And change, exactly right.
never go
That's
anywhere.
exactly
The
right.
first guy I ever remember putting on a strap outside of I didn't know that you guys had it for hazmat.
Yeah.
Was Grant? I cannot think of his last name.
Venable.
Venable. Grant Venable, trailblazing out. In the
He was
last
a good
big fire
firefighter,
department.
too,
Yeah.
He
you know?
was. He
Yeah.
was very. You could tell that he was super into it.
Good
He
at a
got
lot of
into
stuff.
it. Yeah, when he got into it, he was
Talented.
into it. But he was wearing the radio strap, and nobody else was. And like I said,
But it was okay because he
ahead
had a
of his time.
mohawk too, and nobody else did. So that was okay.
He was an innovator.
Yeah.
But before we go too far away from the calming thing, another one I don't want to leave out is communications.
Yeah.
When you are working a call with a really calm, clear dispatcher, man, that really helps.
Helps a lot.
And I'm not calling anybody out as bad. I'm just saying it really does help a lot.
I'm glad you
whenever you
mentioned
have
that.
a-
I'm doing. I'm the last, and Josh knows this already. Starting on 9/11, I said that every workout that I did, I would listen to the 9/11 audio traffic. That was gonna be. I would stop it wherever the workout ended, and then my next workout I would pick up. And I'm almost to the end of it, and it's 4 hours of time period. And the guy it's the main dispatcher that everybody's communicating with. Like, as big as the incident was, he kind of had a little bit of pep in the talk, but there was never panic on how disastrous and chaotic that scene
Yeah.
was, and you could
I
tell.
listened to that. He was very, very calm and very,
So on top of it,
monotone. A lot of it when he, just level.
Yes.
You know,
I don't want to go too deep into it because obviously it's super horrific, but it was knowing the situation, especially when they talked about the collapse when the first tower came down. He knows the gravity of exactly what just happened, and if you really let yourself into that moment, you'd lose it. You'd lose it, but he never does. It's what Chief. What do you need? Okay, we got this going here. We're going to send this. There's a new command post, and then the second tower comes down. Once again, if you let yourself into the gravity of that, you can take it.
yeah.
But he doesn't. There's a job to do. There's a mission to happen. And to your point, communications being nice and clear,
Yeah.
calm,
Yeah.
getting things done.
And
It was impressive.
when I was an assistant chief, we're in the same building. So when things got quiet in the afternoon, all the 8 to 5 people went home, I would go visit with them sometime. And you really should watch them and what they have to do to dispatch a call and handle it, because there's 2 of them in there. They get a call. They can only give you the information that they got. If it's wrong, it's not them. They didn't make it up. and then the phone's ringing, they dispatching, people are calling. So they're busy. I mean, when they work in a call, they are busy. So whenever one of them can really handle a call calmly and get you good, accurate information, man, they are valuable.
Yeah, for that rescue for Station 8, you could hear that it's a confirmed fire. So you've got all these different people calling in the subdivision saying there's a fire at this address. Right? You have to answer all those calls.
Right.
Like that there's a fire, but somebody's got to manage that phone call while also managing radio traffic.
Yeah.
While also in that particular rescue, the lady was inside on the phone saying, "Come rescue me." So now we've got one dispatcher completely tied up with the caller on the inside, and the other one has to deal with all the incoming calls of like, "Hey, there's a fire on my street. Yep, we know we're on it," along with the radio traffic
and typing notes
and trying to manage notes.
Superhuman almost.
Right.
Yeah.
Being able to maintain that calm demeanor.
It's a tough job
juggle it.
whenever they got a working fire.
Yeah.
It really is.
Very difficult.
Yeah.
Or multiple calls at once.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get storms and stuff coming.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Storms, man. It is chaotic, but that's their fit in the whole call.
Sure, no doubt. On to one of y'all. It's not something that we pre-discussed, but if there's you said, hey, we had a fire one time. If there's is there any calls that kind of stick out in your mind? And it could be you can go any route with it, whether it's some kind of silliness that happened inside of the call, or whether it's actually we have one for you for sure, or whether it's some oh crap moment, like, whoa, that was a close one. There's a learning lesson from there. I'll let y'all stew. I'll at least Chief Spell let you kind of brew on it for a second, but you specifically brought up venting your first fire. So I'll start you out with that one, but just while it's going, impactful calls that you think you'd want to share.
Well, the venting story, the reason I wanted to bring it up, because it's like every other firefighter, you learn as you go. Even if you're trained, you learn as you go. And my first, I was a fireman at 3, and we got to a call right off the university. It was they would test concrete cores. There was a place. It was right there on university, and it was burning. So when we got there, we were fighting the fire and everything, but we couldn't get in. It was too hot. We needed to vent it. So my assistant chief was Jimmy Lee Blanchard. He pointed at me. He said, "We need to vent. Go vent." So Rab was my captain. We got an axe. He said, "Go vent. I'm gonna put the ladder." So look, I want to do the best I can do, So I put the ladder. They put the ladder up. I climb up. Well, the highest point. I'm going to the highest point. Well, I'm not gonna sound the roof. I'm not gonna walk down the edge. I'm just gonna go and take care of it. Well, I made about 4 steps, and my foot goes through the roof. The only thing stopped me from going through was I had the axe, and it hit 2 rafters. So
turn sideways. And
turn side. It hit the rafters, and it stopped me, and I was able to grab the peak. And the more I tried, it was like quicksand. The more I tried to work myself out, the bigger the hole got, and I was worried I was going to fall into this thing. And all I can remember is I pulled myself up, got on the ridge, and I sat on the ridge, and I looked at the assistant chief was giving me a thumbs up because the black smoke was pouring out. I had made a hole. And I think it was like that. So all he was concerned with was, "Hey, dude, you made a hole." You know what I'm saying?
Job.
And I'm thinking, I almost died.
Yeah, that was almost the end of your very short career.
That's right. But he was like, "Hey, good fit. Now, I'm not sure if he saw what happened at that point or not,
I don't think that watching a fireman almost die would get a response there. "Hey, man, good job."
But I think he looked down, and when he saw that big hole of black smoke pouring out, he was like, "Okay, good job." And he didn't see what it took for me to make that hole.
Imagine he's looking.
But it was a learning curve, I was like, okay, we're not going to do that again, So that was one of my, takes on fires, But one thing I want to say is the hardest thing as a district chief or as a chief or anything is the fires you can't do nothing with. I made a fire off of Verot. It was that big house. It was 18,000 square foot living. This house burned off of Verot. And when we got there, it was venting, and we didn't have water. So we had to wait till the guy opened the gate to get to it. So when we got there, I had a crew go in, but they ran out of water.
Let me pause you real quick. Is that the
Big mansion.
The mansion. Got
big
it.
mansion.
Okay. Yeah. It was like they would hold big parties and stuff whenever.
Exactly. It was a huge home.
Got it. Okay. Go ahead.
So, Denias, what's his Danny's son's name?
Justin.
Justin comes up. He said, Chief, what do you need? I said, I need a water supply. What do you want me to do? I said, Justin, you know how to do it? He said, yeah. I said, well, do it. Because I know nothing about it. You know what I'm saying? I worked at 5. I was always in the center of, I'm not going to tell you how to do it because I don't know.
Hydrants everywhere,
Just
baby.
give me water, baby.
Yeah.
And that was it. So I sent a couple of guys in. At one point, I think it was Turner and some other people went in, and they had to pull out because they ran out of water. And I'm looking at part of this roof is caving in, and I got a huge home. But at that point, I said, pull everybody out. And we basically sat and watched it burn. And I had a couple of volunteer chiefs that come and said, what's the plan? What are we going to do? I said, there's nothing we can do. Well, you want to take a line and move it from the front to the back? I said, we can rearrange lines until, doomsday, and nothing's going to change because we don't have water. So they kept coming. So one guy kept coming to me and said, well, Chief, we need to do something. What are we going to do? I said, well, I'm going to tell you what we're going to do. When the top floor hits the bottom floor and we get water, we'll put it out. And that's what I told him. He looked at me like I was crazy, but I realized at that point there was nothing we could do.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of guys looked at that like it was a failure, and it was, but it wasn't our failure. Because everybody went home. I could have put guys in there until the roof collapsed and had guys trapped in there. But my thing was the house was a goner.
Yeah.
And we finally got water to where we could run an aerial, but it was running aerial 5-10 minutes. You know what I'm saying? And knock them down. And, and like I said, people looked at it like it was a failure. And one thing when I got there, it was like I was trying to find who's in charge. I said, who's in charge here? Because it was not our area.
Right.
I didn't know. I knew the city didn't want this one because it was going to be a failure.
Right.
Because they looked, and everybody thought, well, I was trying to give it away because I didn't know what was going on. I said, no, it was easy because we weren't going to do anything. But I didn't know if we wanted it, and that's why I kept saying, is this, Milton? Is this Broussard? Who's in charge?
Whose was it?
Robert told me, we talked about it at a meeting. He said, whenever you show up, when you show up on a call, no matter where it's at, you're in charge.
Shoot.
That's what he told me. I said, okay, that's easy. I didn't think it was like that,
Yeah.
So, and I was first in. The only reason I was first in, because Vance Boudreaux was there. He told me, there's a house burning down the road. I said, really? So I got my unit and took off.
Cool.
So
Before the dispatch. Y'all actually got it before
we got there before the dispatch.
Wow.
So I told Vance afterwards, I said, if you ever come knock on my door and tell me there's a house burned down the road again, I said, I'm going to whip you right here at the freaking door. Because I said I was first and I didn't want that one. Because that was a failure. And it hurts, but, it's not a failure because everybody goes home.
Yeah.
It's a win.
Yeah. I think that, was it Greg Gilbo? Was the captain on that?
It was Greg. I had Greg and Vance, I think.
Yeah, your fireman. I ET'd with the fireman that day, and he called me and he goes, "Bro, you picked a good day to ET." He said because it was that fire, and he was first in on it. But I should have been there had I not obviously ET. So that was quite the story.
But as a chief officer or even a captain, you got to have the discipline to know when it's a loss.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's risk versus reward.
No doubt.
And there was no reward in this because it was going to be a failure. No matter what we did, no matter, it was. So we sat and watched it burn.
Without water, it's essentially it's a goner.
It's a goner.
Yeah.
But it's hard to swallow. It's hard to sit there and say that's it.
Especially as aggressive as Lafayette is in general.
Exactly.
I mean, I remember Kurt Berg sitting me down on my very first day as a rookie, and that was one of the expectations that he laid out. He didn't have a bunch, but one of them was, we're aggressive, we're going in on basically everything. So just kind of prepare yourself for that. And it's you could tell that our entire department is essentially that way. We're going interior on basically everything unless it just doesn't make sense, right?
Yes.
So to see us have to pull out is not what we're normally doing.
It was something I had never done. Right. As a captain or anything like that. And Kurt came from the same school I did. We were at Station 5. We were very aggressive. I didn't think anybody was as good as we were as at a house fire interior. We get it. But like I said, you when you make a chief officer, you got to look at the whole picture. And that's what changed me after that. Like pulling Lonnie out of that call. That building had burned. We didn't know how long that building had been burning because we happened on it. It was early in the morning. We were going to another call. They canceled us. And I said, well, look, they must be barbecuing over there. I said, no, there's way too much smoke for that. Let's go
Barbecue in the
investigate. And it was a building, and it was, it was a storefront. And we didn't know how long it had been burning, so I wasn't going to risk him in being inside that building.
Sure.
So,
Chief Spell, you've had some time to run through a couple of fires, one or two in your head. What do you?
I've only been
you
on
got?
1 or 2 in 34 years.
Yeah, one. Well, this is your time to shine. You know.
When I was a district chief, we had a call on South College apartment complex,
Okay.
and it turned into a full alarm. Where we had every station, every truck that was manned come, and then I think we had all of the surrounding departments come man the stations, and some came to the call. It was a big fire.
I was on vacation for that one.
But the biggest
you ever
problem
I
was
don't
the
think
wind and the way that it was set up, the way the building was in relation to the wind. So when I drove up, I was on the road I was heading to Station 7, and it came in, and I was half a mile away. So I got there, and there was just a little puff of smoke coming out of the eaves and the ridge vent.
To know that's where it started and how it ended up
Yeah.
is a little shocking, but go ahead.
Yeah, and it didn't look bad. And then on the backside, it was getting wind. The north wind was blowing hard. It was getting wind, and it flared up and it vented. And man, when it vented, but
It was
I
a
called in the
common
second
attic?
alarm.
Common
Yeah,
attic?
right.
Yeah.
I called in the second alarm right whenever I got there. So, whenever it got air through that hole, man, it just raced down that. So that was the first time that I remember doing a trench cut. We did 3.
Mhm.
So when we'd start a trench cut, before we could actually get it done, it was already under them, and I was watching them like get off the roof, that area, and they'd move and they'd start another one. It was under them again.
Wow.
But that call, we're talking about span of control. I know Gerard didn't say that term, but your span of control, when you go to big call and it's forced on you, you can either submit to span of control or be macho and fail. So that call, it was forced on me. So whenever your dad, Mike, he was a district chief too. When he got there, he said, "What do you need?" I said, "It's going to be too big for me to handle. I need you to go on the backside," and we operate on 3B. And I said, "Get on 3C, and whatever trucks come in, we'll send you trucks, and you just operate off of 3C," because it was just going to be too much radio traffic. So then when William got there, he was a big help too. He said, "You want me to get in the aerial and call it from up there?" Man, that was a huge help. So the district chief, William Benoit, got up in one of the aerials, and that was a huge help too. But the wind was blowing it through the attic, and it was just racing through that attic. So they did 3 trench, and they did all 3 of them correctly, but it just got to them too fast.
Moving too quick.
Yeah. And it was Lane Perry, and I'm assuming Ryan Seymour that was doing it, but I do remember Lane. And there was one time I saw Lane cutting, and you could see the fire coming within feet of him, and I had to get on radio and tell him, "Run down the roof."
that roof is
We had to
opening
start
up.
all of, but the third one stopped it. I mean, the first 2 were stopping it because as soon as they cut, they had an aerial flowing in it.
Right.
And so the third one stopped it. But I thought, oh, we're going to lose it. We're going to lose the whole thing.
Yeah.
But
I think it was a horseshoe.
they did-
I think it was a horseshoe.
it is a
right?
horseshoe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I remember that one.
But so our assistant chief was Brad at the time.
Mm-hmm. I remember.
So Brad walks up and he says, "What you got? What's going on?" I said, "Chief, they got a bunch of Spartans doing their work up there, and I'm leaving them alone."
Yeah, it goes back to what we kind of talk about, the radio traffic. Just let them work. If they,
Yeah.
if they're in a bind, they'll likely key up
Yeah.
and say, "Hey, we need something from you." But outside of that,
If you had our bread and butter house,
yeah,
1,500 square feet, everybody comes in, everybody attacks and everybody does their thing. Real traffic, not too bad.
no, not bad.
But
at
all you're going to do is hamper firefighting efforts if you just continue to talk on that radio and give them all these detailed instructions, So I had to learn probably what we talked about these other big cities that see far more big fires than we have, that you give them an assignment and leave them alone. And you got to trust that they know their job and they're gonna take care of it.
Yeah.
And they did.
Yeah, and that's tricky, man. Who we go down? We're not going to go down the rabbit hole, but that goes into like knowing your crew and knowing who you have. So instead of saying like a specific thing, like, "Hey, we need you to, engine whatever to vent. We need you to vent." Well, that should be the only call. We need or vertical vent, and then you're done. And knowing that they know where they doing it, how big the hole, what kind of hole, all the. Are they gonna? They're not gonna do it on the windward side. All of these different things versus you having to explain all that. I want the hole right there. I need it to be on this side of the peak. I want this. You're almost screwing it up. But hopefully, you know your guys enough to know
and know that they can see the work.
Is this a competent individual?
Yeah, and I keep saying Lane Perry, but he was the one that I could recognize up there. He's tall and thin, so I could recognize him in his gear, but. I wasn't up there with him. Mm-hmm. I didn't see and hear what he did. Mm-hmm. And then I couldn't see what William Benoit was seeing in the back. So for me to get involved in that would just cause a problem, And then the other thing too is I didn't know what was going on with Mike back there taking control of. There was a whole nother fire scene in the back.
Right.
Essentially, it was on a different frequency. But I knew they were doing good because I could see steam.
Right. You didn't have to manage that
was a
portion,
huge help.
You're thinking just, hey, he's got it.
Mike's got it in the back. I know Mike's got it. It's no problem.
Right. One less thing kind of off your plate. If you need something, I'll interject myself. But if not,
So sometimes it's forced on you.
Right.
You can learn it in training. You can check off all the right answers, but until you get to a really big scene with something you can't stop as a wind, span of control, you're gonna lose it if you don't recognize that and give it away.
Right. All right. So we're gonna we could obviously we have in the past talked for hours and hours and hours, and we could honestly continue to go.
Absolutely.
But we've got roughly 15 minutes left before we're gonna tie this up. So we're gonna finish it up with a couple of questions. We'll let each one of you answer. Chief Sonnier, we'll let you roll first. But what we're gonna ask you is two things. Number one is if you were talking to your rookie self, go back in time and give yourself a piece of advice, what would that be? We'll kind of let you play with that. And also the second thing would be in your career, who do you think was really a big mentor to you? Whether they knew that they were mentoring you or whether they didn't, a guy that you looked up to that was going to guide you down the right. He felt like he had a vested interest in your success as a fireman. So, Chief, you're going to get the same exact question, but all right, Chief Sonnier, go ahead. Piece of advice, and then you're a mentor to you.
The advice part, I'm not sure about, because with the advice, it's like everything come kind of easy to me as a fireman because I work with good captains and good people. You know what I'm saying? So the advice I would give is to appreciate where you are. It's the best job in the world. It really is. I told these guys that one time at the training. Was like, I was working in a plumbing warehouse before I got this, on the department. And there's guys that are still working today in that plumbing warehouse. I see them every day. So what stories they have. When they're retired, what stories, and when they're sitting there reclining, what stories they have? You know what I'm saying? Right. But look back at what we've done and the changes we've made and the friends we've made. So appreciate where you're at. Right. And appreciate the job you have and give it 100% because it deserves that, and the guys you work with deserve it, and as far as my mentors, that's another thing. I've learned more from the guys that were negative and the guys that would mess up, and I'd always say, and I'm serious, before I made captain, I always said, I'm not going to be that guy. And I think that's what made me, I'm not going to say a good supervisor because or great supervisors, because I wasn't going to be that guy that know-it-all, or my thing was do it because I said so, or that's the way we've always done it. You know what I'm saying? And I said, I'm not going to be that guy. I said, I'm going to put faith in my guys and because they know what they're doing. So it was easy. I would just set them in motion, and they would get the job done. And the reason I was a good supervisor is because of the guys that were below me, the guys that were working for me. You know what I'm saying? They made me what I was. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so, but I mean, the guys I would say mentored me would be like Dave Hyatt. You know what I'm saying? He was a good captain. He was fair, hardworking. Ray Landry Ray Landry was always like a guy to me I looked up to. He was a big guy, and he was a district chief when I got there, and he was always stern, but he was always fair. Now we'd play games and, board games and, roughhouse around the station. But when the calls come in, he was a different guy. And I realized that. He put that hat on, and you knew you don't mess with him at that point. You know what I'm saying? And I had a lot of guys tell me that about me. They said, it seems like when you get on a call, you turn that hat around, you're a whole different guy. I said, that's the job. Sitting around the station and cleaning up and this and that and making sure this is clean and that, that's not really the job. You know what I'm saying? The job is get on a fire call and, doing what you're trained to do. So, like I said, that's what I learned from. That's the guys I learned from. They didn't put a lot of store in the everyday ins and out. They put a lot of store in what you would do at a fire call. And they would let you know if you did it right or if you did it wrong. And I needed that,
Sure.
So,
I agree.
but that's where,
Okay.
That's
I
where
was
I go
gonna,
with
I was
that.
gonna make you said, your mentor is coming from the negative guys. I was gonna make you say something positive about somebody. So I'm glad you mentioned a couple of names. So I'm like, we're not letting you say that your mentors were although that is you absolutely
No, you do. You got to look at the guys. If you got a guy that wronged you or you felt, he wasn't right when he did that, you know what I'm saying? You need to learn from that. Say, well, that it caused a negative reaction throughout my group. And that didn't, it just wasn't right. So I learned from that. I really did,
But I'm glad you mentioned the actual name. So like, we got to spotlight a couple of guys.
Yeah,
In our
and I
department
can't
that
say
did a
enough.
good
Like I said,
job.
I say
Yeah.
Ray Landry. He was the kind of guy. He just he stood tall and you respected him. And Dave Height, like I said, he was the same way. The guy was just even keel, calm, and if you did a good job, he would tell you did it. Or if you messed up, he'd be quick to tell you messed up. And that's what I wanted, so I could better myself.
And I'll tell you, you said, you weren't sure if you were a good leader or company officer. You were. And I can say that from experience, both of you, the way you led men, the way you operated on a call, set the stage, and you were a good officer. You were a good leader. So know that for a fact.
Yeah,
Well, I appreciate that. I just not one to toot my own horn, but
nobody takes compliments well, and if you do, I think you maybe have a bit of an issue. But yes, we're not going to harp on it too long. But I wouldn't have brought you guys in if I didn't think that y'all were both very
appreciate
good
that.
leaders. Especially y'all are hitting lead off. So
But
we
moving
think highly of
forward,
both
like
of
you said, with something I could tell the rookies or my rookie self would, and I always thought about that. Lead by example. Lead by example. I never backed off from anything. You know what I'm saying? Even if it kind of scared me. Hazmat. I was kind of claustrophobic when I first got into it, but I went into it. But lead by example, and once you do that, it makes your job as a supervisor that much easier. Because guys said, well, he did it. And it was the same thing as Ray and Dave. I knew those guys, they were go-getters. They had did it. And all I wanted to do was please those guys, or make them get their respect. You know what I'm saying?
That says a lot. The fact that you were, I have a great dad, but the fact that you can look to some guys within the fire department and almost like, man, I just want to make dad happy.
Yeah.
That's your only. Just want to make sure that he says, man, that guy did a good job.
Yeah.
So it's good that you had guys that were kind of pulling that out of you. so to
Yes.
speak.
No doubt.
All right, Chief Spell, advice for your younger self
Well,
and mentors.
okay, I have a story of before and after.
Okay.
So when I was in training, I knew very few people, that were actually on the line. So they would come to training when we were there, like, oh, where y'all going? What station you going to? Like, oh, we don't know. We didn't get our package yet, And so they would, almost all of them would say, oh, you don't want to go to this station with this particular guy. He is bananas. He's a psycho. He's crazy. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, you're right. I didn't know who the guy was, but enough of them said it. I'm like, yeah, you're right. Yeah, I don't want to go there. So I graduate, get my package, and it was on the sea crew day, because Clarence Huval was assistant chief. He came and he walks up to me and he shakes my hand. And he said, "Welcome aboard. I'm glad to have you in my crew." So then I open my package and it says sea crew and it says the station, but it didn't say the captain, just the station, and what day I had to get to work. So people come around, where you going? I'm like, oh, well, I'm going to the station. I tell them, and look, and oh, you going with, like, oh, not the guy they've been telling me not to go with, but I didn't have any control over that.
Oh no.
So I got there, and the driver was a really good driver, Leroy Jarnett. a really good, very mature, good driver, safe, knew his truck. And the captain, they were right. So, man, they were right about every word of this, So then later they had, and I don't know why, but there was a vacancy on the relief crew. So the assistant chief asked for volunteers, and we happened to be at Station 1, and he said, look, I'm looking for volunteers, firemen to go on relief before I have to force somebody. Right here, chief. I'm your guy, right here. And I didn't even know who the captain
happens today, by the way, but that's neither here nor there.
So then I go in relief, and my captain was Jimmy Bakke. Oh man, the after was great. Man, Jimmy was funny. He was compassionate about, what I mean? Before and after was 180.
Like two different jobs.
Yeah, and Jimmy made my job nice. It was nice to go to work. It was, and so Jimmy was a big deal for me. He was the after.
So you're counting him as your mentor. You're counting him as the guy that really changed your vision of the fire service.
And so if I could say something to the recruits is, just know that there's an element of negativity, and it's probably everywhere, but negativity and gossip. Mm-hmm. And I got caught up in both, probably multiple times. And I had some really good friends. The wounds of a friend are sweet. And I had some really good friends. We went and worked out in the afternoon at 4:00 at one station, and they came and said, hey man, we got to talk to you about something. Like, what? So they told me, hey man, you've been getting caught up. And when I teach the class to the recruits about the difference between macho and masculine, I say one way to know if somebody's macho is your first reaction to a correction. And my first reaction to that correction was no. Mm-hmm. And then later I had to do some mirror time, like, oh, I got some growing up to do. Because they're telling me something that's true. I slowly got into this negativity and gossip and didn't realize it. But they told me, and that's two of the greatest friends I got. I think we have to be brave enough, if we like somebody enough, to say the hard stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it was hard for them to do that, because you want to be friends, and you could challenge a friendship.
Sure.
But that's what true friends do. They
and that was Kobe Bailey and Brent Swappa that talked to me. And man, I'm telling you, I would remember that for years after, if I found myself like kind of thinking like, oh man, I remember that day in the workout room. So I would tell recruits, beware, it's there. Not everywhere, but it is there. I'm sure just like any other business, it's there.
Yeah, we get, unfortunately, as y'all are aware, we have a lot of spare time at the fire department, and we can get, instead of busy doing a lot of plumbing work or, at a machine shop, that we have some downtime to let some of that negativity build, and you got to be cognizant that it's always out there. I remember that I had talked to Archie Ducharme, that he went into training partially, and I don't want to tell his story, but I feel like I know enough to be able to accurately give it. Is that part of the reason that he went to training, because he was getting caught up in the station life and getting really down within the station that he was in. And I asked him, we've had these conversations, I said, why didn't you just leave? And he said, I don't know. I was like, you could have just swapped out and hopped over to a different station. And he said, I should have, but I didn't know. But he got so caught up in kind of where you had first landed, he didn't get to see the other side, and almost feel like Archie, although I love Archie to death, like he went to training when he maybe didn't have to. He could have held on to the line and found I don't want to say a renewed passion, but his career could have gone a whole different way if he just would have hung on and got around the right positive group of guys.
Yeah, Archie was a good firefighter too. He was. But it's like I think about that show, The Shawshank Redemption. You get institutionalized. I hate to say that. Somebody said, "Why you say the 5-year-old career?" I said, "I got institutionalized. I couldn't see past the walls." And a lot of times, I wish I'd have went off to a smaller station and just had my own little crew. Because it was always turmoil at 5. Good and bad. You know what I'm saying? But it's like I just couldn't look past it, and that's probably what happened with him. couldn't look past that.
We call it. There's a name for it. It's Stockholm syndrome, where you
Mm-hmm.
become, you get imprisoned, and then like you don't want to leave your guy
Your captor.
your captor. You don't want to leave. You're like,
Yeah.
no, I got to stay with the.
Yeah.
That's. I think that he probably got caught up with a little bit of some of that, but
Well, it's really important that we find yourself in that situation, that you try to find people with like-mindedness,
Exactly.
try to step the negativity. Because in my personal career, my personal past, I made a career switch, not a career switch, made a department switch about 3-4 years into my career, and where I was not happy, and I was negative, and the grass is greener, right? So I ended up coming to the department I'm at now, and was expecting it to just be this big change and everything was going to be so much better. And 4 or 5 months in, I was still very negative, and I realized that I was the problem, and I wasn't. I started working on myself and started trying to seek out the good, because once you get in that negative mindset, it's really easy to just see everything negative.
Exactly.
And it not only affects you, it affects everybody else around you.
That's why I had a friend on the department, Joe Dunan. He was my driver my whole career as a captain almost. And that's one thing about Joe. He never fed into none of that. And you know what? That's why I said realize where you're at and appreciate the job, because he did. People would come up and try to, put you in that negativity. He never did. He realized, he'd always say, "This is a great job, and I just can't," And
I'm glad you mentioned that. And Troy Martin was the exact same way. I drove and was a driver for Troy for a few years, and I also was a fireman underneath Troy. And he would say that same thing. So many people are negative on the shop. He goes, "I love this fire." He goes, "I love the fire department." He goes, "The fire department has done so much for me," and that really stuck with me. Of a guy that I'm not saying he was fighting negativity, but he was perpetually happy to be at work. I never, and I'm telling you, maybe I only saw him for about 5 years, but I never saw the man come into work in a bad mood. Never. He might have been a little less happy than he normally is, but he was happy 100% of the time. And that changed. I didn't care where we were working. I could have worked with Troy at 2 for the entire time that we were ever there, because it didn't matter. It didn't matter because we were with Troy. And when we were with Troy, we're going to have a good time. We're going to do a good job. We're going to fight some fire. And that was so impactful. And but I don't want to go too deep down that rabbit hole because we do need to tie this up. But I've asked Chief Spell. I would expect at some point in the future that Chief Spell and possibly Chief Sonnier would hopefully come back again, because we haven't even scratched the surface of all of your time at Station 6 with the Station 6 crew, with Marty and Russell Gula and
Skip
and old Bebo. That's a whole 2 hours within itself. And so we're hopefully going to have, I would really like to have you back to talk about some of those, because the whole point of this podcast, I talked about the exploding egg story. That's what my brain said, is when I said, okay, we're going to do this 2 ways. We're going to have the old guys come on and tell some stories and whatnot, and then we have some of the other guys. Troy was my main thought. Like, the number of stories this man has that were just so ridiculous, that he was kind of the foundation. So, I want to have you back. And then, of course, Chief Sonnier, we didn't really touch too much on all the hiking stuff, because that was the other thing that popped into my head. Landing with Kurt Berg at Station 6 and him telling the amount of hiking stories with Joe Dunan and that crew. I was like, oh my God, we got to get some of this stuff documented. So I don't want to go dive into that, because y'all have got way too much more stuff to talk about. So we're going to try to tie it up, and I'll give you the final thoughts from Chief Sonnier, final thoughts from Spell, anything that you want to give us, and then we'll wrap this thing up. Chief Sonnier?
Final thoughts? Like I said, just appreciate what you have. Appreciate your job, and don't cave into the negativity. And even if things get, like you said, things get bleak sometimes, you with the wrong supervisor, things change. They change quick. Because like I said, I have some negative supervisors, and but when I change stations, things pill up, and I got a family. I had a family at Station 5. I loved all them guys, still do, And like I said, you make memories that you can't make anywhere else, So.
Well, all All right, Chief Spell.
I think my thing comes to mind is I was lucky. I was lucky to have the before and after, with Jimmy Bakke. And then I spent a lot of time at Station 2 as a fireman, and Ken Guidry was a driver there. And Ken Guidry was a fire truck magician. And I was always interested in the fire truck, and I'd watch him. So those seats, we look back, but then it had a window. So I'd sit behind the captain to watch him drive, and he'd catch me. I was watching him shift and everything, and he'd wink at me. But his attitude, though, he didn't get in the gossip. He wasn't negative. He called everybody Papa, and people call him Papa.
Mm-hmm.
And then when he got promoted to captain, he was the same way. Like nothing changed. He didn't have a standard when he wore a silver badge and then a new standard as a gold badge. And I always respected that about him. And man, he had just a real calming way about him. And when people would get rowdy, it was, hey, no, Papa. No, Papa, calm down. Go. And that was it. And it's a lot like Amor Bork. I wish I was more like Amor Bork through the years. He had the same skill, same traits. He was at a rowdy station with some rowdy guys, and Amor Bork could, okay, guys, calm down. Let's get in trouble. And it was it. He would take care of it.
Oh, I know. I passed through on relief multiple times.
Yeah, and Amor was good at every rank.
Yeah.
I don't ever remember riding on a fire truck with him, but I'm sure he was a good driver and engineer.
He's even keeled. It's
Yes,
the same all the
but
time.
but he's very effective in that calm way he has. And Ken Guidry was like that. And so I was lucky to have those characters to watch. Now, it was my responsibility to learn from them and repeat it, but I was lucky to have them.
So I would tend to agree with what Chris said. We got to have you guys back on.
Absolutely.
Because the information that you have is so valuable to guys on today in the fire service. The experiences you have, the leadership that you've shown through the years. So definitely gonna have you guys back on.
And there's way more silliness in there.
Yeah.
Y'all didn't touch on y'all didn't touch on nearly enough
we
silliness.
didn't scratch surface on that.
Yeah, when we do show notes the next time, I don't want any serious stuff. We're throwing all that stuff out.
Okay.
If it's not rambunctious, we're not gonna do it.
We're not going to go there.
Yeah.
Thanks
Thank
again.
y'all for having us.
Thank
It
y'all
was
for
an
coming.
honor. It really was.
All right. So we're gonna wrap that up, and we'll hopefully see you guys on the next episode. So thank y'all for watching. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening.